The American neo-Nazi terrorist organization, the base, claims responsibility for the murder of Colonel Ivan Voronych of the Security Service of Ukraine and threatens new killings and sabotage in Ukraine. In recent months, as reported by global media, the organization has already carried out a series of sabotage operations on the territory of Ukraine. However, the murder of the Security Service of Ukraine colonel turned out to be the most high-profile terrorist act that this organization has claimed responsibility for. So we have an unknown terrorist organization that is threatening Ukraine with new attacks. But is this really an independent group that has decided to fight against the Ukrainian state, its officials, and members of its special services? Of course not. It is the very same Federal Security Service of the Russian Federation. The founder of the base, as is known from information about its creation, currently lives in St. Petersburg, although he is a citizen of the United States of America. And this person, Rinaldo Nazaro, has long been suspected of collaborating with Russian special services. Thus, it can be said that the very existence of the base is the result of efforts by the special services of the Russian Federation. It clearly demonstrates that Moscow is indeed returning to the old Soviet practice, a time when, with the significant help of the Committee for State Security of the Soviet Union, an entire network of various terrorist organizations, both far right and far left, was systematically created in Western countries. These organizations carried out numerous terrorist acts and sabotage operations, including assassinations of leading political and public figures in Western countries, well-known entrepreneurs, and representatives of the immigration from former socialist countries. But interestingly, at that time, no one in the West openly spoke about the close ties between these terrorist organizations and the Soviet Union, or about the fact that they were financed directly by the Committee for State Security of the Soviet Union, as well as by the East German intelligence agency, Stasi. Moreover, a large number of these terrorist activists, in order to avoid arrest and punishment for their service to Soviet agencies, found refuge in Moscow or East Berlin. Now, as we can see, the situation is repeating itself. The founder of the base is located in St. Petersburg and is evidently closely cooperating with the Foreign Intelligence Service and the Federal Security Service of the Russian Federation. Meanwhile, the organization's activists continue to look for individuals who can carry out this or that terrorist act, this or that murder. They use the Telegram network for this purpose, which it seems was specifically set up to support such activities. So it is an absolutely flawless sabotage operation aimed at weakening hostile states. Ukraine is at the center of attention for Baza because it is also at the center of attention for the Federal Security Service of the Russian Federation and the Foreign Intelligence Service. This is because Putin has tasked his security officers with working to destabilize the Ukrainian state and ensure its ultimate disappearance from the political map of the world. But the organization itself is based in the United States because the United States is the center of support for Ukraine and other countries that would have fallen into the sphere of influence of the Russian Federation if Putin and his troops had succeeded on Ukrainian soil. Thus, destabilizing the situation in the United States if its leadership does not realize that it must withdraw its support for Ukraine is also part of this organization's objectives. Moreover, we fully understand that in such ultra-terrorist organizations of a Nazi type incidentally, it is Moscow that talks about fighting Nazism, not anyone else. There is active collaboration both from career officers of the Federal Security Service and the Foreign Intelligence Service of the Russian Federation, as well as from individuals who share neo-Nazi ideological views and thus see Russia as a haven of traditional values, something Putin and his propagandists have worked hard to promote. There are also the most ordinary useful idiots who are exploited to achieve results for large sums of money allocated from the state budget of the Russian Federation and accumulated by the special services of this terrorist country. Therefore, when we talk about terrorists threatening Ukraine, we must understand that the source of this danger is always the same everywhere. It's not about some Americans who have decided to fight against Ukraine, because they are dissatisfied with what is happening in our country. No, these are just ordinary Russian agents. The center that prepares all these acts of sabotage and all these murders is located either in the Kremlin or on Lubyanka. But of course, it's very convenient for Moscow to claim that it is not involved in certain acts of sabotage or terror, because there are certain things for which any state simply does not want to take responsibility. One can only imagine what kinds of sabotage can be organized with the help of agents recruited by the base, if you just consider that this organization finds perpetrators for its crimes among so-called random people. And these individuals may kill or carry out devastating bombings, not so much for financial gain, but rather because their deeply held neo-Nazi beliefs are very closely aligned with those of the original founders of this very significant base. And they might not even suspect it, because they're fools working in the interests of the Federal Security Service and the Foreign Intelligence Service of the Russian Federation, yet they believe they're part of a network of American knights with swastikas. So once again, we are faced with Moscow's absolutely classic methods. And once again, we need to understand just how dangerous the tactics chosen by the Russian Federation are in their war of attrition against Ukraine. This is not only about military actions on Ukrainian territory, not only about systematic and massive shelling of Ukrainian territory with Russian missiles and unmanned aerial vehicles, but also about systematic agent operations aimed at destabilizing Ukraine from within. And it is precisely this work that may be considered by Putin, a product of the Soviet Union's Committee for State Security system, as the most important in terms of destroying the neighboring state he despises and annexing its territory to the Russian Federation in order to restore the Soviet Empire. Thank you, friends. Stay on this channel, subscribe, follow me on social networks, and on Patreon, buy me a coffee and Donatel channels support development of resources. Use sponsorship feature here on YouTube. Victory and peace. Good luck.